So hi, everyone. My name is Marjorie, and as you say, front-end developer, SU+. And for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to talk to you a bit about accessibility. And to start, I would like to go through the origin of the word accessibility and what does it mean. So the word accessibility comes from the word, the adjective accessible, plus the particle et. And a very long time ago, when everyone was talking in Latin, this word was originated as acceder, which meant to go or to move. And then, with time, evolved into accessos, which meant a coming near. And time passed, and we have the meaning that we have right now, which is capable of being approached or reached. When we add the particle ed to this adjective, we just get that is the quality of being this. So we can say that accessibility is the quality of being able to be reached or enter. And if you look up in the dictionary, you can also see that adds this little thing or used by people with disabilities. So accessibility is a word that is very tied to the word disability. And when we take this concept and bring it to the web, we get that web accessibility means that people with disabilities can use the web, according to W3.org. And there's a little thing about this concept that I do not like personally, and it's the emphasis on the word disabilities. Why? Because we humans are very subjective creatures. We are shaped by what we have experienced, where we grew up, and what we have lived. So when we receive an input, we generate different outputs. And on the other side, we also have this common knowledge of the world, like things that mean the same no matter where you're from. And one of these things, I believe, is the word disability. So when I say disabilities, maybe what comes to your mind is this, which is the international symbol of access. And the problem with the symbol is that it's really constraining the meaning of the word disability, because disabilities do not look like this all the time. So disabilities are not just someone in a wheelchair. It's not something that you can perceive or that you can see most of the time. And it's not just a health problem. It's more related to how we humans interact with our environments and things. So disabilities can be permanent or they can be temporal. They can be related to our environment or it can be related to our body. So they're really much more than just this. And I really like more the concept that Kate Cunningham said on her book, the Accessibility Handbook. I'm paraphrasing here, that being accessible is about making your website available for anyone, no matter how they have to use it. And the great thing about this concept is that it's not putting in our minds this concept, this thing about having to do things for a minority or having to do things just for a certain amount of people. Because what we do and what we put out there is just for everyone. It's not just for some people. So let's imagine a bit. Let's imagine that we go to the eye doctor and we get our eyes dilated and everything is blurry. So we need to get home. We cannot walk because it's a bit dangerous to cross the street. So we decide to take a taxi and we use our phone for that. Is it the experience of ordering a taxi through any app the same that it would be when you're not experiencing this temporal disability? Maybe yes, maybe not. Or maybe you're a new parent and you're holding your child and you're trying to buy something on your computer with one hand. And is this the same experience, like trying to use this website with the keyboard without mouse, the same when you use it with your both hands and a mouse? Maybe yes, or maybe not. Or maybe you're in a loud place and you're trying to watch a video and there are no captions, so you cannot really watch it. So there are all these possibilities, all these situations where we find ourselves in a disability position. And the thing is that when we do things, we should not, like when we experience the web and when we use the websites or the apps, we are looking, like when we develop them, we're looking that our users feel happy or achieve something. But when we do things in an inaccessible way, then we're creating different feelings in our users. We're making them feel frustrated or angry or sad. And these are definitely things that we do not want our users to experience. And maybe, I don't know, but at least I don't want them. But the thing is that these feelings are not really new, and they have certainly increased with time. And why is this? Well, the web has also increased with time and has like multiplied and evolved a lot. But when everything started, we basically had just HTML to do things, not many, and it was mostly text, it was easy, and then other things started to come up, images. And this was all in the early 90s, and then things like having a designer or a web designer was not really something or a role that was established. But then we started to get more things like JavaScript and CSS. And then we realized, hey, we can do more with this. We can make it shiny and pink and blue and move things around and make it look better. But then this started just to grow up more and more. And then we got Flash, and then more moving things, and then got animations, SVGs, and then all of these things, jQuery, mobile phones came out, and then a new way to experience the web that was not just in these screens, and then more JavaScript, and then we just jump out where we are now with React, Vue, and everything, and CSS and JS. So there are all these tools and all these frameworks and things that give us the possibility to do great things and to explore our creativity, and they're quite cool. But there's something missing here. There's a process, because we have processes also. We have development processes, and when we do things, we start thinking about what we want to do, then we do some mocks, and then we send it to the designers, and then we start visualizing what's happening, and then maybe we start taking decisions, and then we start saying, oh, we use this framework, or we use this, or we use this database, or we use the other one, and then we start developing. And then maybe everything is done, we ship to production, it's not as easy as I'm describing it, but something like that, very resume process. And maybe at some point when we put it out there, people start using it. And maybe someone asks in your company, or maybe some user asks us like, hey, and is this accessible? And then we're there thinking, but does it need to be accessible? And there's a quite funny thing about this question, and it's that it only has two possible answers. And one of them is yes, and the other one is yes. It really needs to be accessible, because there's no possibility then when it's not, because when it's not accessible, then it means that we are excluding a bunch of people if we think about accessibility as providing access to everyone, right? So the thing about this is that, as I say, we did everything, and then we decided, hey, we need to make it accessible. And then we start thinking maybe accessibility as something extra, as something that needs to be added at the end. But the thing is that accessibility is not a feature. It's not something that you add and you sparkle over your applications in order to make them a bit better for some users out there. Accessibility is something that you need to do from the beginning, and if you didn't do from the beginning, then you need to implement it and continue to do it. It's not also something that you do, and then you end, and it's over, it's already accessible, because you probably will keep developing things and keep adding features into this. So you need to continue this process of including accessibility in your everyday things. So next question is, what can we do? So there are many things that we can do, and I broke it down into 3 main roles. So the first one is when we design. So here is where we start to give meaning and to give sense to our ideas, and they start to taking life. And this is a very important process, and we can include accessibility in this process. So one of the first things that we can do is being mindful of contrast. And what I say with this is that we need to take into account the contrast between the foreground and the background. Usually means text and the background. And there are a lot of tools that you can measure this. But why is this important? Because you maybe did a great design, super cool and very edgy, and this is your super good looking website, but this really does not matter if people cannot read what is in there. So when you have a very low contrast, then you get that some people cannot really appreciate this difference between the text and what is behind, so it kind of just blends out in there. And this is not only for people that have like a low vision problem. It can be like you have glare on your screen, or you are in a very dark place or in a very light place. So there are many situations where contrast is very important. Another thing that we can do is not relying only on color to deliver information. And what I mean with this is that when we try to do things like with color and only color, then this information can be missed because we do not appreciate color the same way as everyone does. And an easy example will be when we're doing like these form states, different form states, let's say the error state, and then you add a red border around it. If you only add this, then someone that cannot see red then won't be able to get that there's an error there. So we should like accompany this with maybe an icon or some text saying, hey, there's an error. So providing more clues in order to support the information that we want to provide. And other things that we can also do at this stage is trying to pick a font that is readable. Usually in web, it doesn't go serif fonts, like with these little thingies at the ends. So let's try to choose a correct font for the correct purpose. And we can also make large clickable actions. With this, I mean, do not only put the availability of the link on the link that is like 12 pixels, and it's very hard and very small, like maybe you have big fingers and are in your phone trying to click this thing. And also, we can provide clear focus states. And when focus states, I mean this little blue outline that sometimes comes in buttons and focusable elements that we like to hide because it looks ugly. But if we hide it, we should provide something like to replace it, something that is very clear that tell our users where is the focus right now so they don't get lost in our page. And there are a lot of other things that we can do. I collected a bunch of links, and I will show you the link for them, where you can find tools and articles about accessibility, things that can help you. So yeah, and then we have the next stage, when we develop. And here, there are also many things that we can do. One of them is keeping in mind the semantics. So we tend to do very weird things with HTML. We tend to use only divs to program our page. I've done it. I don't know, probably you have done it. And this is a really bad practice. And there are a lot of really weird things out there. So the thing is that HTML provides us with a lot of different tools that we can use for our things and our elements. And there are a lot of tags out there, like header, if you have a header, or nav for navigation, or maybe you want a button. And then you decide to do a div. Okay, just do a div and make it look like a button with CSS. But there are a lot of things that you're missing here. You're missing keyword behavior, and you're missing like all the clickable element behavior that it brings using the button tag, and then you will need to do this by yourself. So it's like extra work that you're doing, and maybe you forgot to do it. So it's just as simple as just using the right tag for the right purpose. And when we do this, and when we start using the tags, then we give meaning to our pages. So other tools that provide access to people like screen readers can read these tags and give a sense of what is in our page. And on the same line, we can also structure our HTML in a very well way. So this is very important. So I have like 2 examples, one of them green with good example, bad example. And we already chose the right text, and then now we need to order it like in a meaningful way. So we can have our header under our main content, and then our footer, and then maybe a sidebar, like very easy to read. And if we do it the other way, we just scatter things around and rearrange them with CSS, then our page doesn't have a natural flow, doesn't have an order, doesn't have like orientation. So there are many things that come when you order and you structure HTML very well, like people can browse the page more efficiently. Search engines like index your data better, and content is more easy to find. So there are a lot of advantages that come from this more, like besides providing help to people with disabilities. And one very important thing and point when structuring our HTML are the headings. So headings are like very important, and they provide a lot of information, a lot of structure in our pages. So there's this survey that WebAIM does every year to people that use screen readers, and in here they ask, like, how important are the headers? And turns out that 52% out of around 1,200 people that answer, 52% find headings very important and use them as a main entry point to the page. So when they are in the page and they bring up like the screen reader, then they bring up the headings menu to give a sense of what is in the page. So if we don't have headings, or they are just weirdly organized, then people get lost. Or they try to use something else like links menu, or they just try to find something else, but the thing is that it gets more and more difficult. So one way that we can do is having an H1. So every page should at least have one H1 with the title of the page. And then you can have H2, H2, H3, and so on. And you should not skip them, and you should also not choose them because of their size. And you should also not just put a random element and make it look like a heading, because then also has no meaning for other tools. So this is a very important thing. And the next important thing is hiding thing properties, because maybe there's a case where you need to have your H1 header, but it's not in the design, so we're not showing it, but we should still have it. So we should hide it. And there are many ways to hide things. And usually we use CSS for this, and I will break it into like types of hiding. So we can hide for almost every user, which means that some of these things, some screen readers do actually read this, but most of them do not. So we can use display none, which will take it away and hide it for everyone. We can use visibility hidden, which also hide it for assistive technologies, but it will leave the space in your page. It will be also hidden for sighted users. Or we can just use the hidden tag, in the hidden attribute in HTML. So this will hide it for most of our users. So if there's something that we do not want anyone to see, we can use some of these options. But if we want something, okay, this is the wrong order. So there's another way, the invisible, making it invisible. So this will hide it, the one on the left, will hide it for visual users. And we'll leave it there for screen readers. So what is this doing? It's like kind of taking it away and not having, like clipping it. And this is like, works for Explorer too. And the other way of hiding things is using area hidden true, which I'm saying there, use with caution and read a lot about this because it can get very confusing. And when we set area hidden true, this will hide it for screen readers and will display it for visual users. So why I said it can get confusing, let's imagine there's someone that cannot see pretty well. So they're sighted users, but they also use a screen reader in order to get more information. So if we hide this for the screen readers and provide an alternative for sighted users, then the screen reader is reading something, the sighted user is seeing something else, so things can get confusing. So when you go into the page and into the standards and specifications of this attribute, it actually says test truly, because it's really complicated. It can get very messy, but it's there, so you know about it. And more things to do. So we can make sure that images have a proper alternative text. And this is this little alt attribute, commonly known as alt tag. It's not a tag. But this is very important because it gives information about the image to people that cannot actually see the image. And there are many ways on how to write this text. You should not include words like image of or picture of because it's redundant. The screen reader already reads image, and you should try to describe it in a meaningful way. And we can also try not to alter the focus order. So if we use the right tags, and if we structure it in the right way, then this is we won't have the need to alter or mess with the focus order. And also, we should not give focus to things that do not receive focus naturally, like divs or spans. So depending on what you want to do or what do you want to achieve, you should keep this in mind. And many more things. As I said, I will share with you a link with a lot of resources. And then we already have our designs, we develop them, and then we test them, hopefully. So at this stage, also there are many things that we can do. So one of them, it's unit testing for accessibility. And this is, So this is YesAx, which is using jest and ax, kind of obvious, but you don't need to read it. You just input HTML into this. It's an NPM package. You input HTML, and it will spit out violations of accessibility in your HTML code. So it's a very good way to catch like small errors or basic things that are considered in the standards. But it will not solve all your problems, so you should not rely only on this. But it's a nice to have, and will help you a lot. We can also manual test for accessibility. So we can turn our mouse off or disconnect it and use our pages with the keyboard. Maybe we can install screen reader if you're using Windows, or use Voiceover in your Macs and try to use your web page with some of these tools. And if you have the budget, maybe hire an expert. Maybe hire someone that already knows how to do this. And last thing that we can do is checking for accessibility issues. So out there are a lot of tools that will analyze our page and give us like the different violations that we have. Two of them are Lighthouse from Google, so it's included in developer tools, and analyze your page, gives you like a rating on how accessible it is and the problems. And we also have Axe Coconut from Deck Labs, which is what I personally use. And when you analyze, it's a Google Chrome app that will add a tab in your developer tools. And when you analyze your page with this, it will give you the issues, it will order them by severity, and will give you hints on how to solve it, provide you a link to the documentation of why is this a problem. So it's quite useful. But again, this will not solve all our problems, because you can get around this if you want it. But it's a very good way to start. And in general, as people, as developers, testers, business people, we can try to be more empathic. And that's what we're going to do right now. So I prepared 3 ways on how to experience the web. And the first one is VoiceOver. So I turn on the VoiceOver from the Mac and try to use the Google Flights page. So if you want, you can close your eyes, take a nap, and hear.
Heading level 4, 2 items. Heading level 3, Lisbon. Heading level 3, Antalya. Heading level 3, Barcelona. Heading level 4, 2 items. Suggested trips from Munich. Europe. Form controls menu. Main menu, collapsed button. No items in landmarks menu. Banner. Main. Search. Round trip pop-up button. You are currently on a pop-up round trip ticked menu item. One way menu item. Multi-city menu item. One passenger pop-up button. Economy pop-up button. Economy ticked premium economy business menu up. First class menu. Where from? Munich. Edit text. Swap origin and where to edit text. You are currently on a text area.
So what I did here is trying to write from Munich to Krakow and choose a date. And I don't know, but the first time I heard this, it was very confusing. It was very overwhelming, a lot of information, and processing this information was very hard for me. And people that use these tools are mostly self-taught. So there's no one teaching them how to use them. I'm also self-taught, so I have not much idea how to use it. So it's quite hard. And expert people use this like in a 10-port speed. It's very fast, and you cannot understand anything, but they can. So just imagine being someone trying to browse the web or maybe paying your bills and listening to all this information. There's nothing, and you cannot actually find the content. So it can be very frustrating. Another way that we can experience the web is through low vision. So in this case, I have an example of how someone with cataracts will look at the Google search. It's a simulation, so it's not completely true, but it kind of gives us an idea of what will happen or how does it look. So it's everything very blurry, so maybe this person needs to use also a screen reader, even though they can actually see. And another way will be color blindness. And in this case, it's deuteranopia, which means that they're missing the green cone. So how we see colors is through three cones that we have in our eyes: red, green, and blue, so RGB. And light comes, magic, goes through the cones, magic, and we can detect color. So when one of these cones is missing, then we cannot appreciate all shades. So when someone misses, who doesn't have their green cones, they look at colors like this, and they can only perceive around 2 or 3 shades of color, when someone that has all their cones can see up to 7. So it's very different, and here's my point where if you try to deliver something only on color, then it might get misinterpreted. And with all this talk, and with all these examples, what I want to say is that we should try to put ourselves in other people's shoes. We should try to experience the web in uncommon ways, like what is uncommon for us, and try to think how other people will use my website or will use our apps. So in this way, we can be better at developing for them and not excluding anyone when we do things. And if we use our abilities as a baseline to do things, then that's what we're doing. We're excluding people because we're not taking into account all the different ways that we can experience the web. And it's not about just going to your office like tomorrow or Friday and telling your boss, like, hey, we have to redesign our whole website. Everything is not working because it's not accessible. No, it's more like starting to do small things, because small changes help a lot of people. And with small changes, I mean, maybe run your page through one of the accessibility issues checker and see what's happening. Try to create stories to access some of these issues. Maybe you cannot tackle everything at once, but maybe you can do and start doing things. So start small and keep yourself motivated to continue. Because, as I say, there are a lot of things that we can do. And there are also things that we can do that are not covered in the standards, like if you have a blog and you have like a bunch of text, like a big wall of text and very small font, maybe you can try to increase this font and make it bigger, break down the text, and then you're helping people with dyslexia or with ADHD. Or maybe you can make your menu that is only available with mouse hover, also being capable of bringing it with the keyboard, like adding keyboard actions to these menus. And then you're helping someone with Parkinson that doesn't have very much control over the mouse. Or maybe you're helping someone with chronic pain that cannot use the mouse very often and needs to rely on keyboard. Or stop autoplaying videos and ads in our websites. And then we're helping people with cognitive disorders or with ADHD. So there are a lot of these things that we can do that not only help minority or small amount of people, but help a bunch of people. And if we start doing these things, if we start including accessibility in our everyday processes, if we include it at the design stage, if we include it in the development, in the testing, in the conceiving of our ideas, if we start thinking with accessibility in mind, then the day might come where we can say, I got 99 problems, but accessibility ain't one. Thank you.
Thank you. Marjorie, if you had very little time to spend on accessibility, what would you prioritize on?
Well, I will try to run my page to an accessibility checker and try to see what's coming up in there to try to get an idea. And then there are things, for example, when we did this, we couldn't change the colors because the brand is already established from 20 years, and the colors are not actually accessible, but there are many other things that we can do, like adding alternative text to images, or trying to give focus to things that didn't have focus and needed it, or trying to change those divs that look like a button, but they're not, into real buttons. So there are small things, and starting small, I will say, is the best way to start with accessibility.
Okay. The next question, I think, is really tricky. How would you convince your company to make their software accessible when it's not business critical?
Well, this is actually very important, because I think it's hard to convince business people into thinking that, hey, this is accessible. But what I will say, and what I did say, is this, that accessibility is not only helping minorities, or it's not only helping people with disabilities. So if you want and say to your boss, hey, we need to make our website accessible, and he says, hey, but do we have users with disabilities? Your answer should be yes, because everyone can be disabled at any point of time. And when we develop for accessibility and for people with disabilities, we're not only developing for other people, we're developing for ourselves, because at some point in time, we're also going to be there. So we're getting old, our vision is deteriorating, you're going to get shaky maybe when you're very old, so you're helping also your future self. And if you want to be selfish, then this is another way to say it.
And the last question for the audience, how to deal with accessibility in case page uses not standard navigation, like swipe and other gestures?
Well, this is quite interesting, because then here we should check on how to do this into a mobile area, because usually we swipe in our mobiles. I right now cannot give you a straight answer, because I also was thinking about how to make drag and drops accessible, but I think it's a very interesting topic. I haven't got into it too much, but I will, and I might answer you later.
All right, thank you. I would like to thank you, Marjorie, for her talk. It was really amazing talk, Marjorie, so thank you very much.
Thank you.